Armstrong Williams on the right side.
Armstrong.
Don't curse, speak English.
Armstrong.
Virtuous society.
Armstrong.
I dare you to listen.
Hey, turn it up. Hey. Armstrong. Get on the right side. Armstrong.
Elevate your mind.
Armstrong.
I'm Armstrong Williams on the right side.
Armstrong.
Yo, man, it's your boy K.O. And you're tuned in to the most conservative of our brothers.
Armstrong.
The Armstrong Williams Show. Please give me a break. Grow up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. Thank you so much for joining us. Our guest today, fascinating book, I couldn't keep it down, is R.P. McCabe. In 1986, he set off with his wife Rebecca and their Cocker Spaniel Phoebe aboard a 38 Alagilla color Arabesque in search of Cardinal McCabe and their own adventures in paradise. And during their years of sailing in the tropics, they did find paradise in Jimmy Buffett, which was even better than finding Cardinal McCabe. His first novel, Betrayed, was released in the summer of 2012, and it's just fascinating. It's really about Ponzi schemes, about ripoffs of different families where he tells these stories. They're fascinating stories. Victims of a Ponzi scheme. The Poppy commits suicide. Everything spirals out of control after that. Deep despair and grief. Someone wants to seek revenge. It's just a fascinating story. He'll be joining us. Let me see if Logan is. Logan, are you on the line?
I'm on the line, Armstrong.
Let me see if McCabe. McCabe, have you joined us yet?
Armstrong, I'm here. Thanks for having me on today.
Come on, Jamal, man. What's going on? I didn't know my guests were on the line. I was just, listen, I'm sorry, guys. Normally my efficient Jamal will tell me, but not today. I just want to make sure he's online. So, man, thank you for this book. Tell us what brought this about, and just take us through this book and the fascinating things of the different kinds of Ponzi schemes and what people can do to fleece you out of your money and your resources.
Well, thank you for that opportunity, Armstrong. I appreciate it. Yeah, one of the points I want to make about Betrayed is that I didn't set out to be a poster boy for bringing attention to Ponzi schemes and financial fraud, although it is rife in our society, as you well know. I was a writer before this happened to me, and what I did was I utilized my ability to articulate the things that happened to me and turned it into a novel. What happened was I had come near retirement. I had enjoyed a long career as a small-time entrepreneur, and I'd invested over the years, and my wife and I had planned well. We thought we'd planned well for our retirement years, and I had planned to, while I'd been a writer in the 90s, I wrote magazine articles. And it was my intention to test the waters as a novelist. So that was my golden age dream, and so we had worked and saved toward that. Well, in November of 2007, we received, after some years of participating in this investment, we received a letter that said that suddenly all payments were being stopped and were suspended. Ostensibly the problem was the economy, but that raised a red flag with me because the very nature of this particular real estate investment was that there were certain characteristics that should have allowed us to remain outside of the already problematic real estate bubble. We were beginning to see signs of that, the first signs of failure from the mortgage derivative problems that were beginning to exhibit themselves. And when we received this notification that suddenly our payments from these investments, which we'd been in for a couple of years at that point in time, and just for the record, I had around $1 million wrapped up in it. it just didn't set right. As I began to do some research into exactly what was going on, I also, as a side note, I'll also point out that at about that time, if you take a look at the timeline there, the Bernie Madoff scheme was just breaking onto the national scene. Of course, this was something smaller. It was state-oriented, and by the way, that this happened in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona specifically. Although it was, as it has turned out in the investigation, it was a national investment. So it ultimately brought the FBI in and the Securities Exchange Commission. The thing grew very, very large. But as it personally affected me and my wife, we had exited the stock market the year before. I was getting ready to retire. We had just sold the last of our companies. I as a small-time entrepreneur, I had substantial holdings in real estate, office rental properties, multi-housing rental units, apartment complexes, some individual houses as well. But in addition to that, I had a small manufacturing company in which I was awarded patents for evaporative cooling, and we manufactured and distributed those parts through a number of larger outlets, Home Depot and things of that nature, True Value Hardware and so forth. We also owned a small restaurant operation and a not-so-small janitorial operation. We were the third largest in the state, and a very successful landscape design operation. So I had been selling off my companies, and we were preparing to spend our golden years traveling around the world. We love to travel, as you pointed out in your intro. We were fortunate enough to have taken a sabbatical before my retirement years back in the late '80s, and went off on our. I'm going to call it a sailboat. Some people want to call that a yacht, but I think a 40-foot boat is a sailboat. Anyway, we sailed off to South America and the tropics, and we had wonderful adventure, and actually we had a storied life. I mean, I certainly don't want any of your listeners making the interpretation that I come now before you and cry in my beer over what happened. I probably have enjoyed as much of the American dream as anyone is entitled to, and what happened here is, we make decisions, we go in directions, and those things have consequences. I made a decision based on some information. It turned out bad, and the result is that now I can't do those things. It cost more than $1 million I had wrapped up in it. What happens with these Ponzi schemes, the same thing that happened to so many of the Madoff victims, is that you lose your liquidity. The money I had invested in this particular scheme, which was a real estate scheme, something I thought I knew a lot about, so I didn't go into this blind or depending upon completely depending upon information coming from outside sources. I did rely a lot on my own instincts and what I knew about real estate investing itself. Just that I was at a point in my life where it served my purposes to have my investment managed by someone else, and there was the fly in the ointment. Because what happened was these guys were taking money from new investors going all the way back to 2004. They hadn't brought a single one of their projects, which were inner-city reclamation projects. They hadn't brought a single one to fruition. They simply kept bringing in new investors, and as people like me, for example, might come up at the termination point of my particular investment cycle, they would roll the money from some new investor in to pay me out, making it appear as though this was very solid and things were just as advertised. But it was a play right out of the Bernie Madoff book, because there were no profits, there were no properties being renovated. There were no properties being sold for a 4-year period. These guys had rolled that money from new investors into older investors like myself, and there were around 700 of us. And we were duped. And as we dug into this thing, we found that over a 4-year period, they brought nothing to fruition. There were no buyers, and there were no profits. And the house of cards really caved in. You may recall breaking on the national scene. There was a lot of national attention over the SB 1070 bill that dealt specifically with illegal immigration in Arizona. Of course, immigration was a big topic even now. But what happened at that time on Armstrong was so many of the properties that were being renovated were kind of aimed at lower income, first time blue collar homeowner type clientele, and in Arizona. That contingency is represented largely by the Hispanic community.
RP McCabe, just hold there. Trey, we're going to get Logan in on the conversation when we return. We're live. Our phone lines are open. I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back. Armstrong Williams. Hi, this is Armstrong Williams. Just like the Affordable Care Act seeks to ensure people with public or private coverage can find high-quality health care, AAA911health.com offers consumers you with access to better information, quality care, and big-time savings on your health care. Yes, big time. AAA911health.com offers a 90-day money-back guarantee. That's right. If AAA911health.com haven't saved you money, guess what? They will pay you back in full your membership with no questions asked. Just tell them Armstrong Williams sent you to AAA911health.com.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams. What does it mean to be conservative? Freedom of speech, freedom of free enterprise, freedom of assembly, less government, less taxes. As a matter of fact, a flat tax. Everyone should pay proportional tax. It doesn't matter whether you make $100 million or $10,000. Everyone should pay their 10%. Everyone should have something at stake in this American economy. I'm Armstrong Williams expressing what we mean by conservative traditional value.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams with an opportunity to own a piece of paradise in Nassau, Bahamas. Spectacular land prices, 8,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet lot, affordable prices, hilltop properties with views of the magnificent sea. Just call 242-677-3120 or 3121 or go to info@rightsidewire.com and leave your information.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
Logan, when you hear RP's story, do you think it's avoidable? What are the signs, the red flags that you picked up on, and obviously I know you're being an entrepreneur yourself. I'm sure there are people who've tried to fleece you, but obviously you avoided. What do you take for what you heard thus far?
Well, Armstrong, the first rule of investing is never invest in something where you can't afford to lose the money. Especially if you're an older person, and you pick a number. Maybe it's 10% of your investment portfolio. Maybe it's 5%. Maybe it's 25%. It depends on your own personal financial situation. But you pick some number, and you never put more than the number you can afford to lose in any one investment. Okay, so that's rule number one. I don't know whether our guest, put a disproportionate amount of his life savings in that, but if he did, he violated that first rule. Rule number two.
We're okay there. No, I didn't go in with more than 25% of my overall investable capital. That was not the issue there. It wasn't a death blow to me as it was to some of the 700 people involved in this, and you're quite right about that.
Okay. Rule number two is always invest with people that you know, or people where you have some kind of personal investigation of their integrity. Now, what I mean by that is that, you don't have to be best friends or know them, but you have to be very careful with going in with people that you don't know, strangers. And that's where brand names come in. If you invest with Morgan Stanley, everybody's heard of Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs. If a deal is sponsored by a reputable underwriter that has a well-known name, and people in the investment community.
Madoff had a good name.
That Madoff did. As a matter of fact, I have several friends who are very sophisticated investors who got caught up in the Madoff scheme. But look, there's no one thing that's going to stop you from getting screwed. But you have to look at it. But my friends who invested in Madoff, Armstrong, who got screwed, violated rule number 3. And rule number 3 is, if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true.
But the other thing is, wait a minute. I think the other thing is also is something that RP has said, when you entrust others to manage it for you.
Yeah, may I interject another point there? Because the points that are being made are absolutely 100% correct, and particularly when you're dealing with a security type of investment. Let me just relate a little bit how I think people on a local level like myself end up in this. Seemingly someone who has a fairly good idea of the principles that you're espousing there. What happened here? I was with a wealth management company, a consulting advisory firm that helped me manage my money for 26 years. And the firm that ultimately committed this Ponzi fraud was a company with whom they had placed millions of dollars from other investors for more than 20 years. One of the most difficult kinds of Ponzi fraud to detect are those that occur when a firm or a group of people have been going along, performing correctly and running a legitimate operation for a number of years, and then something goes dramatically wrong, like the national economy begins to implode, and suddenly there is this lapse in moral fiber, and someone makes a decision to. In this particular case, the idea was, look, we have this residual fund that these investors have put up. Let's borrow from that fund to keep everything afloat, and then when things level out, we'll pay that money back. There's a critical lapse in judgment by the people in charge. Then they begin to cover their rear end rather than stepping forward. And it begins to compound itself, and that's what happened here. It isn't so. I don't want anyone, your guest or anyone listening to this, to believe for a second that I think that I should be absolved of, or I got unfairly hammered here. That's not the case at all.
Can I tell you rule number 4?
Yes, go ahead.
Rule number 4 is not all investments succeed.
Yeah,
okay?
That's true. That is true.
And if you go into 5 investments and there's a 20% chance, I mean, I'm talking about risky speculative investments, and
right.
there's a 20% chance on each one of those investments that you're going to hit a home run, that you're going to, you're going to go bankrupt, and
sure.
that you're going to be, and a 6% chance that you'll be like, you might as well have just kept your money in the bank. Okay? Every investment you go into, nobody is 100% successful, and everybody has their share of losses. Now, whether it occurs because
that's why the words risk tolerance are virtually inclusive in all investment decision making. People have to assess what their tolerance for risk is, and astutely pointed out in the beginning of your segment there. No one should have put 100% of their money in. I didn't put 100% of my money in, and I recognize that probably there was one of the projects that I would be involved in. There were 40, by the way. I thought I had a pretty good spread on this thing. If something went bad, I didn't think all 40 of them would go bad, but then I didn't realize, no one could foresee that the national real estate bubble was going to blow up the way that it did. This was kind of a perfect storm, more or less. And what I wanted to show when I wrote Betrayed, I did considerable research. I interviewed more than 200 people who'd been victimized in Ponzi schemes, and not particularly just this one, others as well. And I learned a number of things about how people are affected by it. I discovered a couple of suicides in there where families were devastated. That's why there's a central theme with a suicide that happens in here. Betrayed is not the personal Ron McCabe story. Betrayed is a story of a composite of people who've been devastated by financial fraud and the things that happen to them, and very prevalent in our society today, is the subject of mental health. We saw it with this Dorner affair, the policeman that went off his rocker. We see it in Sandy Hook, where this kid goes off his rocker and they grab guns. This particular protagonist in this novel doesn't grab a gun, but he does slip into a very dark state of psychosis. And I decided to write about that because so many of the people that I spoke to, Armstrong, seem to harbor these dark thoughts of the things that they would like to do or that they wanted to do. It begins to point up other issues that come about out of these things, and I thought all of those subjects were worth pursuing. They were worth talking about, and that's why I wrote Betrayed the way I wrote it. It doesn't answer all the questions, but it talks about a wide variety of the result of how people are affected by these things. It wipes entire families out. Some interesting statistics. If you take a look at the SEC at the latest SEC reports, more than 25,000 cases of Ponzi fraud have been reported since the first of the year. I mean, these are active cases under investigation. This is not a crime that is diminishing by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, it's growing. A lot of these cases don't end up being prosecuted because, as you both well know, they're very difficult. When you have disparate investors that are spread all over the place, it's very difficult to bring them together in a unified voice with a particular central management for carrying an investigation forward. And and federal and state investigators are hamstrung by budgetary considerations. Law enforcement has its restrictions. This is not an easy thing to go after. So I wanted to write about how more than 2 million American families are being affected by this, because one of the things that troubles me tremendously in our society today is that without celebrity, there is no news. Without someone like Bernie Madoff, you don't hear about Ponzi fraud, or Alan Stanford. You don't hear unless or Ken Lay with Enron. You don't hear about it unless it arrives at that level, or some Hollywood personality is burned by it, or some politician or some TV personality. When it's just the Joe on the street, like me, and the 700 other people in this particular Ponzi fraud, you don't hear about it. And I thought, this is a subject worthy of civil discourse. We can talk about this. It isn't. And this novel has gained and garnered considerable national attention. I don't know if you know, but Business Insider has carried a large article on it. AOL Finance. Kiplinger has interviewed me, Motley Fool. There's a lot of focus on this, and as there should be.
We want to come back with you because we haven't even gotten into any of the other cases that you've been involved with. A few more minutes on the other side of the break. Do you have time, RP?
Enough time.
Okay, Logan, we'll all come back. Don't go away.
Armstrong Williams returns in a moment.
For more information on The Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sports shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Most Americans simply have never been taught the basics of money management, let alone how to secure their financial future. But there is hope. Financial Education and Literacy Advisors, also known as FELA, does what others don't. FELA teaches financial education. If you'd like more information about providing a financial wellness program for your employees, or a credit-bearing college course in personal finance, or other valuable programs, please visit myfela.com. That's myfela.com, or send an email to info@myfela.com.
Elder Chicks is an exciting part of the fastest growing segment of the population. Women in their 70s, 80s, and older who are mastering the art of a senior life. We're no longer unseen and unheard. We're providing role models for each other and the baby boomers who are fast approaching retirement. Join our virtual community. Hit www.elderchicks.com on your computer keyboard.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
And welcome back to the broadcast. Give us some other examples of Ponzi schemes that you discussed in your book. And Logan, I'm just under the impression there's really nothing that you can really do about it if somebody is bent on taking your money. And it seems as though in what RP is telling us, they don't start out that way, but they begin to do things they have no business doing. And instead of just being honest and stop the bleeding, then they try to cover their tracks. And what they do is pay from Peter to pay Paul.
Armstrong, I think there are things you can do. You look for signs, and fortunately, knock on wood, I've never been involved, to my knowledge, in a Ponzi scheme. I've been involved in deals where I've lost money, and I've been in deals where I've been the controlling shareholder, and we've lost money because we've made business judgments that at the time we thought they were the right judgments, and it turned out over time they were the wrong judgments. And losing money is part of making money in the business world and the investment world. But one of the things that you have to do is, you have to be completely vigilant with your investments, and then you have to realize that you can't always be perfectly vigilant. So you have to go back and see Rule 1, and Rule 1 is diversify.
Yeah, I would jump in there to Logan's point. You're exactly right, Logan, and I would, in this particular instance, I'd be the first one to jump out and accept responsibility for one major lapse of my own. It was a violation of one of my own tenets for good investing. Follow-up. I had a lot of. I cannot absolve myself from the failure that I had in this particular case, nor do I want to. That is not my point here. I could have. I was involved. There were 40 properties involved in this thing, and as I pointed out, they started out, and there was a very long track record of a very productive and a very successful business model. And no one, you're right, no one makes 100% good decisions. I certainly never have. Where I fell down in this particular case was I relied on the wealth management company that I thought was keeping an eye on this thing a little too much. I'd known these people personally for 26 years. I really believed that they had their eye on the ball. And frankly, I was off playing in the sandbox, to to make a metaphor out of it. I should have, from time to time, physically gone to some of those properties and looked at them. I did not. I relied on a piece of paper coming in the mail once a month, and I relied on checks. By the way, we were looking for 8% returns on these real estate projects, and anyone that's done any amount of real estate investing knows that is a very, very modest return on real estate projects. And so we didn't think we were looking at something that was pie in the sky. As I said, there was a perfect storm here. You had a national economy that was beginning to implode. Arizona had its own specific economic upheaval with the advent of the SB 1070 bill. It was really a perfect storm. But at the end of the day, Mr. McCabe did not get in his truck, did not drive to those properties and verify what I was seeing on those papers. I got lulled to sleep because the checks were there on time when they were supposed to be there, and the reports all said what they were supposed to say. I just and there's no excuse for that, and I won't try to make one. So vigilance is absolutely the hallmark of what a small investor has to do. Your other point, Logan, people cannot invest more than they can afford to lose. In my case, what happened was, what made this so devastating for me was that my other holdings, which I had owned for years. Now, let's be fair about this, too. I didn't just take all of my money and decide to go out tomorrow and buy all real estate. I had owned these small office buildings and apartment complexes for some time. This was an evolving kind of thing. When I got burned in the Ponzi scheme, what it did was it sucked out all of my liquidity. And this is a thing that people investing out there in your audience need to pay attention to. You need to make sure that regardless of where you put your money and how much you invest, you need to have sufficient liquidity if something goes wrong. In my case, I thought I had that. The Ponzi scheme took that from me, so that when the other problems came about, when the national real estate market began to implode, when Hispanic people began to make a mass exodus out of Arizona over this SB 1070 thing, and Joe Arpaio began pulling cars over and checking immigration documentation, there was a huge explosion, you might say, that went off in Arizona, and I got caught in the middle of that because who do you suppose was renting those properties that I owned? Yes, that's right. I would tell you that more than 75% of my renters were Hispanic. Businesses, when the businesses that catered to many of those people failed, and the businesses that rented my properties failed. And it wasn't just me. You're not hearing a story about what happened to R.P. McCabe in Arizona. You're hearing a story of what happened to an entire state and what happened to a very large extent in Nevada as well. I mean, we were deeply affected by those.
It sounds to me that what brought your Ponzi scheme on was, just as you described, a bad set of business circumstances that led to a failure of the business. Fair. What should have happened is that the people running that business should, and that investment, to maintain everybody's credibility, should have said, investors, I'm sorry, we need to go into bankruptcy. We need to go into reorganization and deal with the problem up front. I hate to say this, but this is very much like our nation is going through right now.
Yes.
We have made some very bad decisions at the national level about our government and how we spend our money. And we're taking on debt, and we're being told, hey, when the economy grows, we'll work our way out of it. Our grandchildren will not have to pay the national debt. But we're not dealing with the problem up front. And this is exactly what happened in your Ponzi scheme. You had a bad business decision, and your investors, your sponsors of the deal, just didn't deal with it up front.
Exactly right, and no one wants to take responsibility. First, they want to dodge it, and it's a matter of deniability. No, this can't be happening, and then they make some bad decisions. The next thing you know, someone attempts to cover it up. In this particular case, these guys it became an orgy of greed, Logan. The FBI investigation into this thing disclosed that when these guys saw far enough back down the line that this thing was going to fall apart, they were taking seven-figure bonuses for themselves while investors were they were taking this money from new investments pouring in. What precipitated the final blow to this thing was when investors from out of state began not to invest in Arizona over the immigration issue that was blowing up there. And suddenly you had conventions were canceling, large construction projects were pulling out. Just the whole thing imploded, and suddenly these guys couldn't raise a dime. And I think it went from one day we have enough money to keep this thing afloat to the next we don't, and the letters went out, and of course that's when we saw the thing. But all of the points that you make are exactly right, and we are seeing this kind of thinking perpetuated on a national level, and it's another reason that I think the book is worthwhile. I mean, I will admit to you, I have this is a fiction novel. I wrote it that way for a couple of reasons. One, this is still an open investigation. Federal prosecutors have never brought charges against these guys, and so this thing is ongoing. And there's an issue of libel on my part, so I have to be cautious about that. So this has been so that the book is a fictional tale of this particular circumstance. And then, as I pointed out earlier, I wanted an opportunity to talk about the ancillary concerns that grow out of this. Let's back up to something that people know everything about. Let's back up to Enron, the biggest Ponzi scheme of the 21st century. $70 billion. And
are you saying that it was bigger? Are you saying that? Are you saying? Wait a minute. Hold on. Are you saying Enron was bigger than the savings and loan scandal Ponzi scheme?
Well, I don't know that it was bigger than the savings and loan. I statistically don't know the numbers, but I can tell you that the Enron losses were $70 billion. That's a matter of public record.
We're coming back. We're going to go out to a break. We're going to continue this. It's an important topic, how people can get ripped off. And we also want to know, are there stories where people prevented the Ponzi scheme? Logan Delaney, McCabe, and his book, Betrayed. We'll be back.
Armstrong.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams. Just like the Affordable Care Act seeks to ensure people with public or private coverage can find high-quality health care, AAA911health.com offers consumers you with access to better information, quality care, and big-time savings on your health care. Yes, big time. AAA911health.com offers a 90-day money-back guarantee. That's right. If AAA911health.com haven't saved you money, guess what? They will pay you back in full your membership with no questions asked. Just tell them Armstrong Williams sent you to AAA911health.com.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
Welcome back to the Armstrong Williams Show, and we're discussing R.P. McCabe's Betrayed. Just a fascinating book. You learn so much about these Ponzi schemes, and it's amazing what people are capable of doing. And they look for innocent victims. There's people who are naive and who are trusting. I mean, just imagine, listeners, trusting your hard-earned money, such as your retirement saving, to to a financial advisor only to lose it all in a fraudulent scheme. Obsessing about whether your money manager could be the next Bernard Madoff, the mastermind of this $50 billion Ponzi scheme, isn't going to do much good. But you got to have, what I'm taking from this, you've got to always have healthy skepticism no matter what. It's not going to hurt you. You got to make sure that your advisors are legit. Even if they switch hands and bring in another firm, you got to make sure they're legit. You got to dig deep. And you got to understand the differences between a manager and a custodian, which is something I really want RP to get into. And then you got to be skeptical of pitches for exotic, obscure products. And so, what I want you to do is talk about the differences between a manager and a custodian, RP.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure that Logan made an oblique reference to the fact that he had actually been an investment manager on some projects. So I'm sure he has some thoughts on that issue too. But yes, the difference between a custodial kind of investment and one in which you have a managed investment. Stock market investments are custodial kinds of investments. Securities, security instruments, things that are financial instruments typically are considered custodial kinds of investments. That is to say, you have no, you really have no access to, nor do you have a way really of looking inside the operation of the investment. The Madoff scheme was an example of a custodial kind of investment. Enron was that type. The kind of thing that I got burned in is a managed investment kind of thing. Now, the difference is that an investor in a managed investment really has an obligation for scrutiny. There really is very little oversight when you get into one of these things. And for that reason, it's obligatory on an investor to take care, as you say, to always be holding these people holding their feet to the fire. I mean, as Logan points out, first of all, you can't overinvest. Second of all, and this is a principal precept of investing, not everything pays off. I was a successful entrepreneur. Do you suppose that every single company I ever started made it? No, they didn't. Failure is implicit in investing, and that is the reason. When you get into these smaller kinds of things, you wanted another example. Let me tell you about an accountant who had a very small investor list, but managed to get their investments over, I think, around $20-30 million. This was a Scottsdale, Arizona thing in which a woman actually committed suicide. And the guy was taking their money, and they were believing him without really looking into what he was doing with the money. And by the time they found out, I mean, I suppose the money was someplace in the Caribbean, down in the Cayman Islands or someplace like that, because next to nothing was recovered, and virtually all of the people on that list lost all of it. So managed investments, particularly.
You know what, Logan? It's very interesting because as I listen to this conversation, and I'm sure others, if you think about it, I meet possible Ponzi schemes every week. I meet people who are shady and who have these deals, and you just shake your head. But sometimes you laugh at them because you're very dismissive of them because you know you're not going to get involved in these deals. But it happens all the time, and especially the poor, they're fleeced of their money all the time.
Well, Armstrong, what you're saying about shady deals coming in front of you all the time, people think that because you're an investor that you're prepared to be stupid. And they don't realize that the reason you have money is because you're fairly sophisticated with your investments. I have people coming to me all the time, trying to sell me, the next Microsoft or the next Facebook or the next, trip to the moon. It is amazing the number of people out there who think they have great ideas. And sometimes they actually are great ideas, but there's something else that needs to be done. You have to have the ability to execute the idea. And it takes a whole lot to bring together successful investments, successful businesses that, most people just do not have. And there are a lot of people who just are out there trying to sell pie in the sky. One of the things I wanted to mention, and this is an aside, is sort of the human disaster that occurs or can occur when somebody gets involved in a Ponzi scheme, because I've known several people who have gotten involved in the Madoff tragedy and Ponzi scheme, and I have witnessed people who had a pretty good lifestyle, and they began to believe that, wow, this thing in Madoff, this is great. We're getting this huge investment year in, year out, this huge return. So they would put more and more money, and it would sort of double up. And they began to live off of higher, the higher returns that they were getting based on this Ponzi scheme. And they really began to believe something that they really should not have believed. They let the investment go from maybe 5 or 10% of their portfolio to 75% of their portfolio, and those are the people who really got hurt. The people who didn't get hurt were the people who said, "Hey, this is 5%. It's a nice return. I'll keep it at 5% of my portfolio." And you can afford to lose 5% of your portfolio if you were in the group that Madoff was targeting, which are the people down here in Palm Beach and people in New York City who were just very wealthy. But it does have, when you watch people who have had money, who invested it, who've lost it, where they have to cut back on their lifestyle, you may say, hey, here's a guy who lived off $500,000 a year. Boo-hoo, he's got to get down to, $100,000 a year lifestyle. You may not feel so sorry because, you're living at a $50,000 a year lifestyle, but you have to put it into context that this guy has had a major change in his or her self-esteem. They can no longer keep up with their friends. It's been a major disruption in their social life, their economic life, their relationships with their families get disrupted. I mean, there is a lot of personal disruption that comes from these kind of schemes. And like I say, the only way to avoid it is don't put all your eggs in one basket.
RP, I guess entertainers and athletes are just the perfect prey for these shysters, because you hear about their stories all the time, and they're so out of it and so uneducated and doesn't understand their own finances that it takes them years after they've worked so hard in entertainment on the field, on the basketball court, on the baseball field, to realize that all the money is gone.
How many of them do you know? That's absolutely the truth. And there's another category out there. Let's make a phone call to everybody that's ever won a lottery and see how much of that they still have. No, these kinds of people are the perfect victim for these kinds of schemes. But I'd like to go back and just speak to a couple of points that Logan raised, because they are.
And bear this in mind, we only have 2 minutes left, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, okay. Invite us back. I'm enjoying this. I'll make it very quick. Logan is exactly right. When this happens, regardless of the economic strata that you have lived in, suddenly it's gone, and your life is turned upside down. And when a life is turned upside down, I think it matters little whether you were accustomed to living on $250,000 a year or $25,000 a year. When you go from that to something that is dramatically different and pulls you completely out of what you had, what your life was geared to, the impact is exceedingly devastating, and that's the point of of Betrayed. I hope your readers will take the time to go and get it. It's a really great book. It's getting great attention nationally, and I deeply appreciate that you let me come on with you and talk about it. And Logan, thank you so much for being on with me. I appreciate that. It was really nice to have someone knowledgeable to share this information with.
My pleasure, RP.
Listen, RP, tell them how they can get a copy of the book, the audience.
Okay. All right. You can get your copy of Betrayed, obviously, at Amazon.com. You can also come to my own website, www.novelistrpmccabe.com, novelistrpmccabe.com. You can get them on my website. I'll go into broad release after March 15th. You'll be able to find me at Barnes & Noble and all other outlets. I had an exclusive with Amazon for the initial release of the book, but that'll be over in March. But Amazon's a great source, or my website.
Well, thank you, RP. Betrayed. Thank you, Logan. All the best.
Armstrong. Armstrong.